Please be warned. Inspired by a true story deals with crimes that may contain adult themes and violence and is intended for a mature audience.
September 13th, 1978. Sheryl Bradshaw, a drama teacher, takes a trip to the dating game, where she asks potential suitors random questions that lead to an eventual date. But one of those contestants is a serial killer. In 2024, Anna Kendrick offers up her directorial debut, recapturing these same events. Always trust your instincts, because Woman of the Hour was absolutely inspired by a true story. Welcome to True Crime for Cinephiles. This is inspired by a true story, a podcast devoted to keeping artists honest. We're going to discuss the overall details of the actual crimes, then review the film on its own, how much of it's true and how much was Hollywood magic. You can find other episodes at thehollywoodoutsider.com or your podcast app of choice, and can always share thoughts on this episode or suggest a film by emailing us inspired@thehollywoodoutsider.com. I'm Aaron Peterson, an accredited film critic for the Hollywood Outsider podcast and website. And joining me today are my fellow film critics and true crime devotees, John Davenport.
Hey, buddy.
And Amanda Sink.
Hello, hello.
And we are done with the devil for a while, or at least the literal devil. Now we've got the metaphysical, metaphorical ones.
Yeah, we're certainly not done with satanic entities.
Ugh.
Just the possession type we're done with.
I'm glad we're done with supernatural for a while.
Just for a little bit, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That Exorcism of Emily Rose, by the way, that's a terrible, terrible story. If you haven't listened to that episode, it's a terrible story. It's a great episode, I'm sure, but it's a terrible story.
No, please listen to the episode. It is a good episode. I think we had a good time holding hands, singing Kumbaya. We did some of our Hail Marys to make sure none of us got possessed, but the story itself, not
full of grace.
And now we're segueing to Anna Kendrick and Pitch Perfect. And now it's inspired. No, I'm just kidding. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. But this is her directorial debut, which is kind of awesome. And I thought fascinating that this was the topic she wanted to tackle.
She did an amazing job, truly. I loved the editing in this movie. I love the intentional direction that she took to show a woman's experience and to help individuals understand just how awful it is to be put in those positions and be expected to dumb yourself down or to belittle yourself to make others feel better. And growing up, and even like in therapy and reflection, I've realized how much of a people pleaser that I am, and a lot of women are, because we're raised and brought up to always try to think of how it's going to make a man feel or make someone feel. And that is not a two-way street. It is not the same experience for everyone. And I feel like she did a great job of capturing how unique that experience is, and also how horrific all of this would be to be in her shoes.
Well, no, very much the male experience is the opposite, right? You burst through the door, you're a bull in a china shop, you take charge, you're the alpha male, et cetera, et cetera. Like, that's how it seems we're indoctrinated to behave.
And there's a world where you can have both, where you can have someone who has a dominating presence or who is a very alpha male, but also understands, hey, if this is not reciprocated, it's time to walk away. It's not time to talk about bashing your head in.
The word no is okay. Really is.
Yeah.
And the world needs to understand the boundaries. And hopefully we've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. For sure. Well, as of this recording, Woman of the Hour is streaming on Netflix, but that's always subject to change. New episodes are released every 2 weeks of our podcast, and can be found wherever you listen to them or at thehollywoodoutsider.com. You can also hear episodes early if you support the show at patreon.com/thehollywoodoutsider. Film and true crime fans alike are always debating how true their true crime is, so you think dating today is tough. Just wait until you're confronted with a real serial killer. Here's the truth behind Woman of the Hour. Rodrigo Jacques Alcala was born on August 23, 1943 in San Antonio, Texas, to parents Raul Alcala Drucour and Ana Maria Gutierrez, and later became known as Rodney Alcala. In 1951, Raul moved their entire family to Mexico. 3 years later, Raul abandoned the entire family. Rodney was 11 years old at this time. In 1954, Rodney's mother, Anna Maria, moved himself and his 2 sisters to Los Angeles. In 1961, Rodney joined the U.S. Army at 17 years old, where it was noted that Alcala was disciplined, not charged, for assaulting young women in the Army. Alcala allegedly suffered a nervous breakdown and went AWOL, after which the military discharged Alcala due to his diagnosis with antisocial personality disorder, as well as several various narcissism and sexual deviancy diagnoses. A real charmer. Rodney eventually went to college and graduated from UCLA with a fine arts degree. Rodney was also emerging as a sexual predator, and that became fully apparent on September 25th, 1968. An 8-year-old little girl named Talia Shapiro, yes, she was 8 years old, was walking to school when Rodney Alcala pulled up and offered her a ride. Talia said no, to which Alcala indicated that he knew her parents, so it was okay. This little girl, thinking it must be okay if he knew her parents, agreed to the ride. And Alcala talked her into visiting his apartment so he could show her some photos. As an avid photographer, Alcala's primary means for seducing women would be very similar to this, by enticing them to model for him or showcase photos of other models. Thankfully, a witness notified police that this older man was seen taking this young girl into his apartment building, which seemed very suspicious, and police were dispatched to infer if there was anything inappropriate occurring here. When police arrived, they found 8-year-old Talia disheveled and unconscious. She had been raped and beaten with a steel bar and left for dead. Rodney Alcala had fled, but he was now a wanted criminal. Talia Shapiro remained in a coma for over a month before finally awakening, and it took months of recovery. She survived, unlike Alcala's future victims. Alcala changed his name to John Berger and moved to New York City, where he enrolled at NYU and even studied under director Roman Polanski. You can hear his story in our episode focused on the film The Strangers. Rodney Alcala would later be known to have raped and murdered at least one other person at this time, Cornelia Crilly, 23 years old, though her murder would not be resolved until 2011. At the time, Alcala was added to the FBI's 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list in 1971 and was eventually identified, arrested, and extradited back to California to stand trial for the rape and attempted murder of Talia Shapiro. And unfortunately, Shapiro's father moved their entire family to Mexico after the ordeal, and he refused to let his little girl testify. Therefore, they only convicted Alcala of child molestation, and he was paroled in 1974, where he was rearrested 2 months later for assaulting a 13-year-old girl named Julia. And then Alcala served another 2 years. He was again paroled in 1976. It was believed that Alcala, when his parole officer allowed him to fly to New York, also murdered Ellen Hoover, as her date book, on the day she was last seen, showed she had a meeting with one John Berger on that day, July 15, 1977. Our justice system. What a prize. In 1978, Alcala found himself employed by the Los Angeles Times as a typesetter, which is really just formatting the text for articles. And during this time, Alcala amassed hundreds of sexually explicit pictures of young men and women by claiming to be a renowned professional photographer. Many of these photos were of unidentified subjects, and police later came to believe that, due to the nature of Rodney Alcala's proclivities, some, if not many, of these photos were of unknown murders at the hand of Rodney Alcala. And that brings us to The Dating Game. The Dating Game was a fun television show, and it ran from the early 70s on. It was revived multiple times over the decades, and it revolved around 3 bachelors or bachelorettes who would sit away from the main contestant, who would then ask each of the 3 random bachelors or bachelorettes questions until that main contestant selected their personal winner. And the game show would finance a date between the 2 to some ultra cool venue or Disneyland, one of those. On September 13, 1978, Sheryl Bradshaw was that main contestant. Little is known about Cheryl because she backed away from any limelight after this event. But at the time, she was introduced on The Dating Game as a woman with a wealth of experience. She once earned a living massaging feet. At the time of that recording, on September 13, 1978, Cheryl was working as a drama teacher. And of the 3 bachelors she was questioning, bachelor number 1 was Rodney Alcala. One of Rodney's fellow bachelors even found him quite unnerving and narcissistic before they went on stage, yet they went forward with him. He was introduced by host Jim Lang as a successful photographer who enjoyed skydiving and motorcycling. Yes, Jim, and also, if you guys ever did a proper background check, you'd also know he enjoyed assault and murder quite a bit.
See why HR is so needed.
The Dating Game did not, in fact, conduct any background checks. It wasn't part of their process. Now, Cheryl, if you watch the live video, has a good time. So do all of the bachelors, including Rodney Alcala. There's a lot of back and forth, and we'll include the actual full YouTube clip in our Hollywood Outsider post. Cheryl asked the men questions like, "I'm serving you for dinner. What are you called and what do you look like?" To which Rodney replied, "I'm called the Banana, and I look good." Cheryl asked him to be a bit more descriptive, and he said, "Feel me." Ew. Cheryl asked, "What's your best time?" To which Rodney replied, "Nighttime is when it gets really good." Now, that could be fun and flirtatious if it wasn't a cold-blooded serial killer that was giving those answers. Cheryl then asked bachelor number 1, and I couldn't make this up if I tried, in a very crazy voice, she said, "You're a dirty old man. Take it." Rodney replied, "Oh, come on over here," and then grunted and growled like a dirty old man. Or an ape, one of those. Cheryl seemingly had a splendid time on the show, and quite willingly engaged in the overly flirtatious and humorous tone of The Dating Game. And when it was all said and done, she chose Rodney Alcala, the serial killer, to be her date. Rodney somehow won. And I think it's important to note, he's an experienced manipulator. He's an experienced charmer. That's what he did to lure women to their deaths. The show awarded them a date consisting of perks like free tennis lessons and a trip to Magic Mountain. But then, something happened. Cheryl met Rodney face to face. After the show, as they became acquainted, Cheryl noticed an uneasiness in herself. That odd little whisper in your mind that alerts you to the fact that danger is lurking. Cheryl felt Rodney was not all that he seemed. So much so that after meeting Rodney, Cheryl later stated, quote, "I started to feel ill." Cheryl approached dating game producer Ellen Metzger, and according to Ellen's interview on 2020, she stated, "Ellen, I can't go out with this guy. There's weird vibes that are coming off of him. He's very strange. I am not comfortable. Is that going to be a problem?" Ellen would tell her that no, it was perfectly fine for her to not go if she did not feel safe. That decision probably saved Cheryl's life. Shortly after this, Rodney Alcala would later rape, assault, and murder 18-year-old Jill Terry Barkham, 27-year-old Georgia Marie Wickstead, and 31-year-old Cheryl Lee Lamb. Then, on February 14, 1979, he viciously raped and assaulted 15-year-old Monique Hoyt, who managed to escape by pretending to be into Rodney, by feeding his ego. Monique implied she wanted a relationship with Alcala, the man that just viciously raped her and was planning on murdering her. And Rodney bought in. He was taking Monique back with him, and while Alcala refueled at a gas station, Monique fled from the car, sounded the alarms, and later identified Rodney Alcala as the man who assaulted, raped, and took pictures of her and his rape of her. But never forget how smart Monique Hoyt was. Rodney was arrested, and his mother posted bail. While awaiting trial, 21-year-old Jill Marie Parenteau and 12-year-old Robin Christine Samso were both beaten, raped, and murdered by Rodney Alcala. He was finally identified by a sketch that was crafted by witnesses, which Alcala's parole officer recognized him from. Most of these cases were proven later through DNA advancements, but the police believe Rodney Alcala is guilty of an untold amount of debauchery and destruction. Many unsolved murders are believed to have been committed by this disgusting son of a bitch. Hundreds of photos have been released to the public in hopes of identifying other victims. Despite being convicted all those years ago, Rodney Alcala died of natural causes at the age of 77 on July 14, 2021. Throughout history, women have had to protect themselves at levels men never seem to worry about. It's an unfair scenario that women cannot go about their days as carefree as men do, because the overwhelming majority of crimes of this nature happen to be committed by men to women. It is tragic and it's atrocious. But men love to proclaim, "Don't wear this, don't say that, don't act like this, don't react like that, don't walk alone, don't drive there, always take a friend, don't you know better?" It's as if it is impossible for many men to admit that it's the predators who are the problem, not the women. Rodney Alcala was a predator, a rapist, a murderer, a monster. He took advantage of countless women who trusted him, and he abused that trust repeatedly. Sheryl Bradshaw became a survivor without even realizing it. She partook in the flirtatious and humorous nature of the dating game. There's nothing wrong with that. She did nothing wrong. That's how people live. It's how people have fun. It's okay. But then she said no in a time when it was grossly frowned upon, because she trusted her instincts. She was smart. She did not care what others, including Rodney, thought. She owed no one. The word no is the most important singular word in language. It affords one person autonomy over their own agency. It sets boundaries and affords a person the ability to clearly state they are not on board. This is not for me. The word no also saved Sheryl Bradshaw's life. A stark reminder to all of us, never be afraid to use it. So Amanda, I mean, this story is really about women, and you happen to be one.
Whoa.
Well, she is.
Is this shocking news, John?
Yeah, shocking. I mean, what are you rolling
I
about?
keep forgetting about it. I'm just like, wow, that's something.
Maybe she identifies differently, but that's her call. I'm not getting on that train. Did you know this dating game story before you saw the movie?
No. How wild.
You never heard about the dating game killer, which is funny because the only person you didn't kill, it seems like, is the person on the dating game. So why call him the dating game killer? I guess it's because it's popular. The TV show was popular.
Yeah. And I mean, that definitely it's just a crazy reflection that this woman casually interacted with this guy who was the serial killer and rapist, and she managed to get away.
And she managed to trust herself, which I find fascinating because I think what you talked about at the beginning of the podcast, right? That's something that seems to be frowned upon in some respects.
It's still, even to this day, there are still some people who think that you should be respectful in the way that you communicate back to somebody. And I agree to an extent. But if somebody is perpetually weird or creepy or uncomfortable, I don't feel like you should have to be nice. But to be honest, I feel like it's more of a self-preservation thing. Because if you're too mean, then they might be more enticed to try to take you out, is the way I think about it.
So, John, what did you think about this true story? I mean, Rodney Alcala is quite the pig.
Yeah, he's showed up on different shows that I listen to from time to time, and it's disgusting. Everything about him is how does somebody get away with as much as he got away with? And the only answer really is that he was able to operate during a time period in which this sort of thing was easy. Information didn't transfer as quickly as it does today. People don't know what's going on from one town to the other. You can just easily lie and no one's going to go, can I see ID? You can go, yeah, you know what? It's in my other pants at home that I left on the dead body, and nobody will sit there and question you about it. It's just a perfect storm of things back then that allowed these people to kind of like weave their way in and out of obscurity to their own benefit.
It's like people didn't take it seriously. I mean, we know from doing this podcast, right, that crimes against women were not treated with the same reverence as they are today. That's obvious. But the idea that the police showed up, they know absolutely it's Rodney Alcala. And because she can't testify, which I do not blame her father one bit for not wanting to put his little 8-year-old through that hell of going to testify. I understand where he's coming from. That's a very, very difficult choice, and it's a hard choice for him to make. That doesn't mean that he should get to walk away with a cheap child molestation charge. And also, you still only get 3 years when you're convicted of that. Like, that's just disgusting. And then you go out, and 2 months later, you do it again, and you're still not locked up for many, many, many years. I don't understand the system sometimes. I don't understand how our system allots the sentence for certain crimes. You know what I mean? Like, I just do not understand it. You can have a guy who sold marijuana is doing far more time than someone who rapes a child. And I make it make sense. You know what I mean? Just make it make sense.
None of it does. I mean, that's the chief complaint, right? Is that our justice system is broken. And I dare you to find somebody who disagrees with that. Because when you reflect on not just this case, but every other case, there's always a way for there to be a lesser penalty. Somehow, some way, somebody gets off a little bit easier than they should.
It's just tragic. And the luring of victims. You know what's funny is when you reflect back on this particular serial killer, right? He lured people by promising to take photos of them, and you'll be a model, and I'm a photographer, and da-da-da. And I have literally had conversations with people where they say, I don't even understand that. I don't understand why you would go with someone just because they promised that. I'm like, look online now. People love photos of themselves. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. Now people have accounts dedicated to it. I mean, hey, good for them. They're making a lot of money, and it's their body, their choice, whatever. I'm just saying people love the possibility of celebrity. So much so that you have a serial killer who knows he's known to the police, goes out and risks it to go on a dating show.
Also, keep in mind, so when I was growing up, we had one of these creepy photographer guys who would try to, I'm going to do this. This was back in MySpace days.
Oh, my God.
So this is not anything new.
What was that guy's name? The MySpace guy, what was his name?
Tom.
I wonder what Tom's doing these days. Sorry, go ahead.
He got
counting money.
A lot of money. Yeah, he got so much money.
Tom's doing fine.
But we had one of these guys, and some girls, especially when you're younger, you're not thinking of it as though this person can harm me or he's going to like sexualize me or something. They would be excited just to like get a fall photo shoot, or like I can take pictures with my friends or something like that. It's not always seen in this very malicious light. And so if you don't have people whose parents are very involved, it's not even are their parents present, right? Like, because a lot of people get stuck in this, well, then their parents just weren't around, da 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 da. Their parents might have been around, but didn't, talk to them very openly about all of the possibilities that exist there in the world for women to be afraid of and to be cautious of. Mm-hmm. So like, if you don't have those conversations, they're not going to know about it. And that's what I saw with some of these girls, is they just didn't have parents. They were often the most religious and their families were very conservative. And so they just didn't talk about those things. So these women like never really considered that to be a potential threat to them until it was like, girl, you're gonna go into the woods with this random dude to take pictures of you. Like, think twice.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy. Like, so back in the 90s, we used to have this thing in the mall called glamour shots, right? A friend of mine's mother took her to go and get glamour shots done. And the photographer's like, oh my God, you're so beautiful. You know what? I'm also a photographer for some modeling agencies. Can we get together and do some shots? And she said yes. I'm sure that it would have gone really sideways because I think for the most part, and again, no one really tells stories about what happened in those sorts of situations, but she brought her mother along for the shoots.
Oh, she was smart about it.
Yeah, so she was smart about it. However, I'm sure this guy has used these things, used this trick from time to time to, if not hurt somebody, actually be able to take advantage of somebody.
Absolutely. Now, I want to touch on this before we get to the Sheryl Bradshaw of it all. So the dating game as a concept, to me, it's no different than the Bachelor, Bachelorette. I don't understand this. Do either one of you watch these shows? I just don't understand about the idea of just randos that are desperate for celebrity. Mostly, it seems like hooking up and getting together based on a reality show. But I guess if you think about it, maybe it's not much different than life, with Tinder and Grindr and whatever are out there. I don't know. I don't use dating apps, but is this just it's really no different than those things?
It's another facet and form of it. Sure. And if you think about the accessibility of that back in the 70s, obviously it was very different. So it was either you're meeting through friends and family, or you can meet through these other avenues, which I think is how reality TV shows got a little bit more notoriety. It's a way for people to get connected to fame and celebrity, and you get to have potentially a good fun time. Is this the same thing as dating through Tinder or Grindr if you're a gay man? No, I don't think it's the same.
Is that a gay man app?
It sure is.
Oops.
I just wanted to throw that in there for you real quick.
Or maybe I already knew that. I don't know.
Or maybe you did. But I think those are actually more dangerous than something like this, because at least all eyes are focused on that. Not all eyes are focused on, and it's just there's so many people who flood and inundate those that you have no idea who you can trust. Not even from like the standpoint of like who's going to hurt, murder, rape, kill you. It's people who are married. It's people who are whatever. Like there's no vetting that's happened through Tinder. At least with a dating show, hopefully they're doing a little question. I know they didn't do background checks.
No. Well, they did a lot of questions and still that just shows how easy it is to manipulate someone. based on conversation. I'm not saying that
not in
Cheryl's
2024, I don't think.
I still think it is. I think
No, it
people
still
are
is.
receptive to what they want to hear sometimes.
There's some science behind the kind of people that end up on dating apps. Sure, do you have the normal people that are on dating apps actually trying to find somebody? Yes, but there's some science about the attachment styles that are most common among the people who are on dating apps, and those attachment styles are generally the most dangerous ones. I can't remember the name of those.
Avoidant, anxious.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that back in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s, the dating game, The Price is Right, all these shows were just some way to somebody get their face on TV to see whether or not they have it or not. Prime example, the dating game, people who got their start on the dating game, Farrah Fawcett, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sally Field legitimately got her start on the dating game, Tom Selleck, Steve Martin, and John Ritter.
Okay, wow. I didn't realize it was that popular.
Well, that's why Cheryl went on there, right? She wanted to take a shot.
I recognize that, but I just didn't realize she only referenced Sally Field, okay? I didn't know we had a whole Santa's list.
I think Arnold probably would have stood out no matter what he did. I don't think he needed the dating game. You know what I mean? Like
Looks like Bob Saget also.
No, he probably needed it. He probably needed it. Yeah.
You ever suck feet for money? What?
Wait, what?
For drugs?
What just happened?
It's the clean version of whatever happened on one of the Half Baked.
Okay, moving on. So I found it fascinating to actually watch the live video of this because Cheryl is having a great time. And Rodney Alcala, look, I think he's kind of slimy and smeary in the movie version in Woman of the Hour. I think Amanda agrees with me. I'm not sure. But whereas you watch the real Rodney Alcala, and I'm like, I get it. I mean, he's kind of charming. Sure, he's a little lewd. But those things are only creepy after you know he's a serial killer. If you watch it not knowing he's a serial killer, he's kind of a charming guy.
He had the look that most women were going for.
Little edgy.
Oh God, who's that 80s John? He was
Stamos?
in the. Yes, he gives me John Stamos vibes.
Are we just going to go through the whole cast of Full House during this episode? Is that what?
Cut it out. Where's
so
Dave Coulier?
Oh, hey.
Do we have an Alanis Morissette song on set? Do we have that?
We can make that happen.
Wouldn't it be ironic?
Happen.
Oh,
wouldn't it be ironic? Oh, so anyway, I feel like he had more charm, charisma, and even just like physical attractiveness than the actor/character in Woman of the Hour film. So when you do watch the video, to me, it's more believable why people might be more drawn into being lured by him. He doesn't come off incredibly creepy. I think in the scheme of watching this, she's being lewd in her questions and the way she's asking them. Other people on the panel are responding in this like sexualized, romanticized manner too. So it's almost like it fits naturally. And so you can feel like he feels very humanized in this. It's very bizarre.
did you agree, John, or do you feel differently?
I feel differently, but I can't tell if it's because I just don't like people from the 70s or if it's something else.
What?
That's a very weird thing to say.
That is a very, explain.
I just think everybody from the 70s looks dirty and unshowered and all that. I'm just, and nobody knows how to comb their hair, and it's just gross. We get much better at it in the 80s.
Oh, jeez.
But then in the 90s, we go backwards again and go, with grunge, which I did participate. But I did so in a very clean manner. And, it's just weird.
Okay. You have weird thoughts about weird. To Cheryl's selection, I give her nothing but full credit for having the ability to, once she talks to him, and in the real life, they didn't go offset and have like some drink and spend more time walking in creepily in a parking lot. She just got a bad vibe from him when she met him backstage. But ultimately, the gist is the same. She got a bad vibe. She said, I'm not doing this. I'm not going out with you. Now, she never told him that. She just didn't go. They just didn't arrange it. But I admire the hell out of that. And I think especially it was difficult because she was trying to get, a Sally Field bump, if you will, a Farrah Fawcett bump, trying to get her career going as an actress. And potentially this could have helped her. But by backing out of it and saying, I'm not doing it, she knowingly put herself in risk of career suicide, if you will, and didn't care because this was the right move. She knew this was wrong in her heart.
Women's intuition ain't nothing to F with. That's all I got to say.
So one of the things that I really love about this is that Anna Kendrick has come out and said that she wishes she can ask Cheryl how it felt to her in the moment to trust herself, especially in that time, because women have always been asked to not trust themselves and to be lighter or whatever it is. And she has come out and said that she wishes that she can ask her that. And I think that's just a really cool question because it is exactly what happens to her and what she does. And I really appreciate it. When you look at some of the interviews that outline this whole dating game murder, so you can watch interviews with the producers, and the producers are like, oh my God, he was great. And we didn't do that much of a background. And I couldn't understand why she didn't want to go on the date, but if she didn't want to, I wasn't going to force her, that sort of thing. I love the fact that she was the one to say, I'm not going to do this. And everyone just was okay with it.
Good point. That's a good point. And we can probably segue to the movie at this point because it is fascinating to me that really that is what Anna Kendrick is telling. That's the story she's telling, right? The story she's really trying to focus on is that it's okay for a woman to trust her own judgment, to go with her gut. And it's not only her character, right? You also see it in the hitchhiker who ends up basically giving up Rodney Alcala because she has that moment. Now, granted, it's not necessarily exactly how it played out, but it's similar to how that young lady escaped. You know, she escaped by convincing him to take her with him. And then when he went into the gas station, she escaped. That's how she escaped in real life. So there you go. There's a truism. But the movie uses that opportunity to showcase that this girl realizes if she freaks out, if she panics, this monster is going to kill her right then and there. She's dead. She's not going to make it out of here. So instead, she plays it off as if she was a willing participant because then maybe she has a shot. Maybe she can get away. You can see as Daniel Zovatto, who's playing Rodney, he's wrestling with, is she serious? Am I remembering this wrong? Was I not a monster? And convinces himself that it's okay to bring her back. You can see that being played with in the story, in the script, and the action, direction, etc. And it works great. And I love that there are different elements of that within the story, as this is a talking to women. It's almost like a talking to women piece. Would you guys agree with that? That's what it feels like to me as a movie.
I can't say whether or not it feels like that because it's not talking to me, but I do identify that there are several things in here that I wish I had a better understanding of. Like the moment in the beginning of the movie with Anna Kendrick and Pete Holmes, and she comes back from that. First, she goes to that audition, and they're kind of like dismissing her right in front, right to her face.
Mm-hmm.
It's just two guys who have all this control. Oh, well, would you be willing to wear a bathing suit or show your chest? You know, she has a really great chest. All of that was just gross. And then when it moves into this conversation and this going out for drinks with Terry, who's Pete Holmes' character, and he like comes on to her and then acts like a child when she rebuffs him. And so she's trying to smooth things over with him and eventually ends up in bed with him. And of course it feels gross because of everything she had to do just to make him feel better. That part's disgusting to me.
I didn't like that part of the movie, honestly. It kind of goes against, well, I guess it informs her character that she's not going to make that mistake again, I get is the idea. But I would have preferred she just didn't want to make the mistake to begin with, you know?
Well, don't we all?
Yeah. Well, we've all been there though, right?
Yeah. To answer your question, I don't think that I see this as talking to women as much as for women.
Okay. Explain.
Just this is helping other people understand. It's a way for us to kind of commiserate together in the shared experience of being a woman, but also to help others kind of see what the experience is like without it feeling incredibly forced. Because it never feels like they're bashing men or something like that, which is often what happens. I see, or my feeling is, when it comes to some types of women think pieces where it's like men are terrible. In this, it's more, this is the experience of just being around terrible people. It's not necessarily about being a man versus a woman, because there are some people who are better than others. And I think for most of it, it's just, though, representing the experience, which is why I say it's speaking for us, not to us.
As a whole, whether you knew, because Amanda, you didn't know the story. I know, John, you did know the story, right? Because you've heard about Rodney Alcala before. So you love this movie, you said, if I recall correctly? I'm not speaking for you. No, I'm talking to Amanda.
Yeah. No, okay, I'm sorry. I'll shut up now.
Look at that. He's mansplaining. He's getting ready to mansplain. That's what I heard.
I thought you were talking to him too.
No, Amanda, you loved it and you didn't know the story. So why did you love the movie overall, I guess?
Yeah, just what I shared, but also Anna Kendrick, I think, had a spectacular way of lining out the story where we're getting a glimpse of the horrors that have happened, but not in an overly grotesque way or triggering way. Like in the moment where they're out in the open field and he's raping someone, it's not focusing on the rape of her. It starts to pan out to the openness. And to me, that was more symbolic of, look at how horrific that would be to scream into nothingness with nobody nearby to hear you while that's happening.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so when you change the perspective and you change the direction there, it doesn't glorify or make those experiences. We already know they're horrific. Like, we don't always need them detailed. And it's weird to me that so many people feel like they need to see them to have the impact.
Mm-hmm.
It exists without it being grotesque and just feeling icky. So I love the way that she took the film. I love the story direction, because she obviously had to make some levels of enhancement to make it fleshed out as a film. And I think she does a great job of that, where, you know, they go out and they have drinks after, and that's when she starts to get a bad vibe from him. And her telling that waitress, and the waitress having her back, like there's certain things that, like, as a woman, you can look at another woman in the eyes if she's on a date with someone, and you can tell if she does not want to be there and if you need to help her out. Or like having women as a backup, like you'll tell them, hey, I'm going on a date. If I call you for an emergency, or if I need you to call me with an emergency so I can get out of this without being put in a position where I can get hurt for saying I'm rejecting you.
See, that right there is a great point, because guys don't think about that. You know, if we were on a date, we wouldn't tell our buddy Joe, hey guy, I'm not, if you don't hear from me, this crazy, you know, we don't have that. It's not the same world, and it's not the same life experience. Yeah, we have
to share our location with somebody, so that way if anything happens to us, they know where we were last at or where our phone was last seen. Like, we have to be on constant high alert with walking down the street, who's around, with how you treat men in public, because you don't know if they're going to take out their aggression or have a bad day and take it out on you. Like, there's one of the best tips or tricks that I ever learned from my father was to make sure that people weren't following me in my car to take like a different path. And if somebody was tailing me for too long, taking the same turns or whatnot, then don't go home. Like, that's the last place you want to go, because you don't want them to go find out where you live. So that's helped me out multiple times, because I've been followed home before.
That's creepy.
So it's just those little things that women experience.
I have friends who have talked about the fact that they, like this group of girls who talk about the fact that they all share their locations with each other for just that reason.
I share my location mostly because I'm getting older, and in case I have a heart attack, I want people to know exactly where I passed out.
No, I actually have that set up on my watch. Just got a new running watch, and I have it set up that if I fall over in the middle of the run and I don't get back up again, it will send out a text message to everybody.
Oh, Aaron needs that.
That's true. I have it, actually. I just don't turn it on. I feel like we're going in the weeds on this one now. A little bit. Yeah, we need to go back to the movie.
Oh, right. The movie. The movie is fantastic. Movie's absolutely fantastic.
Why do you think it's fantastic? Like,
well, the thing is for me is that I went into this knowing what the story is. I've heard it on several different podcasts as far as what the story of the dating game killer was. And so when I went into this, I didn't expect to feel tension nearly the entire movie, but that's what ended up happening. The very first time you meet Rodney, he's about to kill somebody, and you're like, oh my God, it's going to happen. Oh my God, it's going to happen. And then the scene in which Anna Kendrick's walking away from him in the parking lot, he's in frame nearly the entire time. She just can't escape him walking to her car. And it's a beautiful amount of tension they build up. Everything about that is masterfully done. And I'm so proud. Not that she gives a shit what I think, but I'm so proud of her for doing this.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think anybody who's an actor and has been in as many films as Anna Kendrick has, she's a very established actress. So she's had a ton of experience with the camera and knows where to place the camera, how to build tension, what's important. It was surprising to me to see her take on this particular topic just because she's kind of more known for comedic works than overly riveting thrillers. So her first directorial, it was kind of surprising to me that she took this turn, but I really, really appreciate it, especially when I saw how much of it was talking for women and really speaking to situations that I know that they deal with and how she positioned them. Now, there's certain aspects that aren't true. You know, the whole woman that is claiming to have seen Rodney and like, that's the guy, I know that guy, he killed a friend of mine. None of that's true. None of that's true. But it was done to paint a picture of Rodney Alcala had plenty of people pointing fingers at him, and he still kept getting away and walking away from all of these terrible, terrible things. That's kind of why.
And women not being listened to once again.
Yes, there you go.
Hush up. He's talking.
Oh,
sorry. I'm women-splaining now.
Oh my gosh. No, she's absolutely right. Like,
I don't mean it. Don't come at me.
That's what they were, what she was speaking to, it seemed like. You're talking about that parking lot scene. That was so well done that it felt very David Fincher to me. I mean, and that's absolutely a compliment. You know he's there. Everybody already knows he's going to be there. And typical thriller tropes are the guy's going to pop up right before the car, or a cat's going to jump out of the car door, or some random nonsense to make you jump. But rather that, she's like, you already know he's going to be there. I'm going to show him the whole time. And you know what this woman has to deal with. She knows he's there, and she has to pick up her pace. She hears his pace pick up. Like, she's just, what do I do? What do I do in this situation? And I just thought it was excellent direction. I mean, to the point where when the film was over, and yes, we get the beauty of Cheryl escaping, and we get the hitchhiker who brings Alcala to justice, and you get the long explanation at the end of here is all the damage this horrible human, air quotes, did. I was left with, this is a director I want to follow. Like, she has done well enough on her first run out to establish herself as a director worth following, because she has something to say and she knows how to say it. And that to me is just impressive as a first-time director.
Here.
And what the movie got right, and did it respect the victims? The accusation of, I think it was Laura, who discovers, I think it was Laura, it was Nicolette Robinson, who is the one that identifies and is trying to get someone to notice, anyone to notice. None of that happened. But to Amanda's point, I think that was illustrating that nobody was listening to women, and that was the problem, right? And so that didn't happen, but they created an element to explain that within the film, because I think it would be very hard to do outside of that. And, Cheryl's encounter didn't amount to a mini date. We already talked about that. So, but it was very close. Like, for an inspired by a true story, this is very close to what happened. And most of the story of the hitchhiker is that's very accurate. The man was a monster, an absolute monster. It's amazing how many people he killed, and he probably killed so many more people.
And I feel like, despite her not showing the visualization of how terrible he was, you still have that same impact. You saw the aftermath, and you saw glimpses, and you understood how serious and how terrible it was. And you saw the ramifications that it left on those who loved those individuals.
Yeah, and I like Daniel Zovatto's acting here as Rodney. I think he did a great job of being creepy as hell. And I agree. I don't think he wasn't charming though. That's the one thing I wish we would have more of. I didn't find him to be a charming guy.
Agree.
I found him to just be gross. So you agree, Amanda? Like that's my if I had a problem with the movie, that would be the problem.
Yeah, I don't think he has the same swoony energy.
Swoony energy.
Swoony.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, can he sweet talk? Can he... You guys have never heard of the word swoon?
Oh, I've heard of it. I like this. Hey, you know what? Make it your own. Go ahead.
Anyhow, I think there was more believability with our real offender here than the actor himself. The actor just felt a bit more like he was the creepy guy who thought he looked really hot.
So are you saying if this was Bachelor 1 and Bachelor 2, you would probably go more for Rodney Alcala himself? Because he was good at it.
I think he knew how to manipulate and charm people because he relied on it in some way.
Yeah, that's what he did.
I don't know his personal life, but he definitely relied on it. And so when you rely on something, you become more of a master of it.
You do know his personal life. I read about it for 10 minutes. I explained it to you.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
I didn't know him.
I understand what you mean.
But yes, in short, we agree. Whatever.
Would you guys have done this any differently? I'll be honest, outside of, and I really, I hate to say it because I understand what they were going for with the casting of Daniel Zovatto. Oh, wait, one more thing that wasn't true. Okay. The whole reframing of the questions to be very pointed, direct, and to take kind of matters into her own hands.
That's an important call out.
Yeah, that was not true. Cheryl was very willing participant, very playful, flirted heavily throughout the entire episode. So that's one difference.
That was just a way of showing that she had agency in that moment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Does that bother either one of you? That they changed that they didn't make it true to form?
No, and the reason why I didn't is because I would have much rather seen the deeper side of Cheryl than just let her be like reading off these cards. Seeing her gain agency, seeing her grow in the moment, seeing her decide to take control of what is happening and let that be her shining moment on television. I enjoyed seeing all that.
Yeah, I would agree with John. I like seeing her reclaim that identity of herself and her power and trying to stay true to, who she as this character is at her core. And whether that the real Cheryl was like that or not, outside of the scope of the show, I think that it's great that we get a modern take on how women often feel in those situations. Like I mentioned earlier, being put on the spot where you have to pretend to enjoy something, or that you're fine with someone's presence, or that you want to be doing something just for someone else's appeal and for their feelings despite your own, I think was such a really cool addition.
Do you find that normally in your everyday life that
yes.
Yeah, even still to this day, so it hasn't changed drastically.
Yes, or men who innately will start with like, I don't know if you can help me with this.
Oh.
Well, if it's maybe your job or something like that, I'm pretty sure I can. But the same things that are assumed of women are not assumed of men by men. So you still encounter those same things. You still encounter creepy men. You still encounter men who think that their jokes are funny when they're really just uncomfortable. All of that. And we're still not at the place where women can truly speak up and be like, you're being a creep right now. And one, because we all know if you do act quote unquote combative, now you're put in harm's way, whether he meant it that way or not.
That's a good point.
There's that's, a woman stands up for herself or shows that she has strength. Oh, she's so dumb. She is so dumb. I can't believe, what an idiot. I can't believe that's
a bitch.
Or she's a bitch. Like all these things that people say I don't like calling women bitches, not because I don't like the word bitch, but more so it's like trying to use their sex against them. And that's a stupid thing. If I'll just call a woman an asshole if she's an asshole, but
that's fair.
There's all these ideas that like people do to take down women who are strong and standing up for themselves. And it's disgusting to watch because they're using their femininity against them. It's gross. You don't sit there and use color against a person, or you shouldn't use color against a person. You shouldn't use gender against a person. You shouldn't use anything other than like somebody's own history against them if they're going to do something.
Well, I've found, and Amanda and I've had this conversation. There's always one of three when people they're insecure. It's really an insecurity thing, right? It's an insecurity thing. When people are confronted with a strong, powerful woman, it's always they're dumb, they're a slut, they're a bitch. It's one of those three. And there's some justification for, well, if it was a guy, would it matter? Would any of those things apply if it was a guy? Well, not usually. Not usually. It's usually someone who just feels inferior because a woman is doing better than them in some field. If a woman says no, that's what this movie is really talking about, or it's talking for. If a woman says no, that's it. That's it. There shouldn't be a conversation. There shouldn't be an ill feeling. They shouldn't have to feel bad about it. They should feel very comfortable about it. And we as men should be secure enough to say, okay, and walk away. If you ask a girl on a date and she says no, doesn't mean keep asking. You don't get to tell a woman how to dress and where to go and how to act and everything else. Like, they can act as flirtatious as Cheryl is on the actual dating game, and it should not matter. As soon as she says not interested, you should walk away. But unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. And it's sad.
Not yet, but maybe one day.
And before we head out of here, there is one more thing we want to note. Anna Kendrick, who directed the film, starred in the film, did a fantastic job. I think we all agree. She did a fantastic job across the board. She, through her interview circuit, appeared on Crime Junkie, not inspired by a true story. What? Of course, we didn't ask, so it's really our fault. But Anna Kendrick, come on! Aaron at the Hollywood Outsider. But did a pretty great thing. While she was doing this interview with Crime Junkie, she talked about the money aspect. And she said, and this is a quote, "This was never a money-making venture for me. Eventually, Netflix bought the movie, but it wasn't until like the week before the movie's premiere at TIFF that I thought, oh, the movie's going to make money. And I asked myself the question, do you feel gross about this? And I did." So she said, I'm not making money off of the movie. The money is going to, or has gone to RAINN, the RAINN organization, RAINN.org, and to the National Center for Victims of Violent Crime. And I have covered movies for decades. I have done podcasts for movies for a decade and a half in various forms. It's always a rarity to see someone that gives up for others and actually has a real, I'm not saying that filmmakers don't care about their topics, but they also care about money most of the time. Let's be honest. I think this is a big deal, and it should be made a bigger deal. Not that she's bragging about it. I think she's just saying this is how gross it made me feel. I could not take money for this. And it's shocking because she does such a fantastic job in this. Like, this is, I hope this leads to much more financially rewarding work, beneficial work, just beautiful work all around. I think this is a very hard film to do right, and I think she did a wonderful job and made it far more interesting than it would have been without her insight. And if you or someone you know needs to talk to someone about sexual assault or anything along those lines, you can always reach out to the RAINN organization. They have someone on call 24 hours a day, which is what Anna Kendrick's donation will help with. 800-656-4673, 800-656-4673. Well, I'm glad this movie came out, and I'm glad Netflix is promoting the hell out of it, and it's become very popular, I think, on the streaming service, so good for them. And the next movie was also a Netflix movie. If you want to get ahead of it, it's called The Stranger. It came out in 2022, so it's The Stranger with Joel Edgerton. That's the one you want to watch. That's our next episode. The actual story is very, very sad and intriguing. The movie, boy, do we have different opinions. Greatly different opinions.
We're just going to leave it like that just so that you are intrigued to listen to the next episode.
There you go. Hang on. Tantalizing. That's what we're doing. But that's it for this episode. So if you enjoyed this podcast, please share the show on your social media outlets, whatever they are. Tell people to watch Inspired by a True Story. That's the only way podcasts find listeners. It's very hard to break through these days. I'm sure I should do more TikToks or something, but I honestly am not good at it. So if any of you are great at TikTok, reach out. Maybe you can help me do something snazzy. And give us a review on your favorite podcast app, Apple Podcast or Spotify, whatever you listen to, because you are the best source of promotion. So tell your true crime maniac friends about us. And thanks for listening to Inspired by a True Story. Do you guys want to say anything as we exit?
No.
This is why I don't ask.
That's a perfect sentence, is all I'll say.
There you go. That
is a complete sentence.
I see what you did there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Inspired by a True Story. Now, let's keep those artists honest.